All right, everyone, let's get the show started. Welcome to our DevOps office hours. It's July 21st, 2021. My name is Eric Osterman, and I'll be leading the conversation. I'm the founder and CEO of Cloud Posse. Cloud Posse is a DevOps accelerator, and that means that we help companies own their infrastructure in record time by building it together with your team while showing them the ropes. So if that sounds interesting, head over to cloudposse.com/quiz to get started. Again, cloudposse.com/quiz to get started. Our call today is recorded. If you're tuning in from our podcast or YouTube channel, you can register for these live and interactive sessions by going to cloudposse.com/officehours. Again, that's cloudposse.com/officehours. We host these calls every week. We'll automatically post a video recording of this session to our YouTube channel, as well as follow up with an email so you can share that with your team. So today we have a special edition of Office Hours. Taylor Dolezal, a senior developer advocate from HashiCorp, is joining us to share a little bit about a cool new product. Taylor most recently joined us last month to share about what his job as a developer advocate entailed, as well as shared a little bit about the future of Terraform. As we all know, HashiCorp is the company behind phenomenal open source tools that we all know and love, tools like Terraform, Console, Vault, and now Waypoint. So today we have him back to talk about this new and exciting product. Waypoint is basically a fresh take on how to do application delivery in a way that's friendly for both developers and ops teams. We're going to give a live demo of this. Taylor's going to lead that, as well as answer any questions that you might have. So before we get started, I just want to lay out the format. The format for the call today is a little bit different. I'm going to drive the casual conversation here with Taylor. Feel free to jump in at any time to ask some clarifying questions. Otherwise, let's try and keep most of the questions to the end so we can get through the entire demo. So with that said, let's take it away, Taylor.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Eric. Welcome, everyone. Very happy to see you. Happy to have you. Thank you for coming. Today, I'm going to be talking about Waypoint and what it is. I don't have any slides for you. Today's just going to be code and discussion. So like Eric said,
want to see.
It's like just the good bits. Just like if you've seen that meme on Twitter of, JavaScript, the complete guide, and then JavaScript, the good parts. Same thing here. We're going to keep all the good parts just for you. Cool.
Cool. So you ready to share your screen, Taylor? Should I give that up?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah, so I will go ahead and share that screen. Y'all should see a desktop here, and cool. We should be good to go on that front. I've also got my terminal here, one of my best friends, and we'll be using that quite a bit today as well. So what is Waypoint? So I'll go ahead and cover that really quick, just give a 10,000 foot view. What Waypoint is a way to build, deploy, and release your applications. Waypoint provides a really nice framework to get that up and off the ground and running, because typically, I'm sure that anyone that's worked with applications in the crowd has dealt with, we do things a little bit different here whenever you start a new project or work with a new company or work with a new team. And Waypoint is looking to get rid of that and provide a nice interface to work with those applications and build them, no matter if it's mostly containerized applications right now is the focus. But if you want to deploy to Lambda, if you want to deploy to Kubernetes, we have you covered. So let's go ahead and get started and kind of talk about some of the components that Waypoint has. I'm going to go ahead and bump up my the size, because I know it's one of my most requested things, as well as one of the biggest requests we get today. So I don't have just one demo for you. I have not two demos for you, but three. We're going to walk through a few things. Two's a party, three's a crowd. So I figured we'd go off of that. I do have some Terraform in here as well. I'm going to go ahead and get that spun up here. As you can see, I was testing a few things out just before the stream. I'm going to go ahead and just to show you, I don't have anything up my sleeves. I'm going to do a Terraform YOLO here, Terraform Apply Auto Approve. What this Terraform is going to do is going to stand up an EKS cluster in AWS. And so I'll check in on that a few times as we go through the stream in between these demos, but that'll be our last one in our grand finale today. I'll go ahead and share this code with you as well. I'm going to go ahead and put that into the Zoom chat. And that is so this is the demo code that I have for you today. You can check out the Terraform code in your own time. You can follow along. Feel free to enjoy it. It's for your entertainment, and PR is more than welcome. Issues more than welcome if there's anything else that you want to see in this context. So awesome. So I have this kicked off. We'll come back to that in just a bit. So we talked a little bit about what Waypoint is. Now let's go ahead and take a look at it. Let's start with the UI for Waypoint. So if you want to get started with Waypoint, say you're on a Mac OS machine, you can use Homebrew to go ahead and install that. So it's as simple as brew, install Waypoint. I've already done that behind the scenes and before this call, so I'm good on that front. I'll go ahead and show you that I'm using the latest version of Waypoint, which is 0.4.1. Right now, Waypoint 0.5 is in the works. One of the things I really like about Waypoint as a project is instead of having a site or anything like that to follow along with and see what's up next, Waypoint makes heavy utilization of the milestones in GitHub. So you can actually see what the team is working on and what some of the goals are for the next major release. So if you're ever curious, feel free to check that out. So let's go ahead and do Waypoint UI authenticate. This is going to open up a web page for us to show Waypoint on the web and all of the projects that we have currently. I've gone ahead and initialized and set up one project to get this GitOps demo up and running for us. This is going to be the first demo we're going to go through. So this is the Waypoint UI. It's organized in projects. And so right now we don't have a good way. We're currently thinking through some good ways to have, say, if I have a GitOps project, for example, like this one, and if I wanted to have integration, staging, production, different types of environments, we haven't really gotten a flow for that ready. So that is still something that is in the works. And then you can also see that I've gotten this installed locally. Waypoint comes with an installation command, and you can target what platform you want to install the Waypoint server on. Waypoint is available for Docker, which is how I have it installed here. A little bit later, we're going to show you what that's like to install it on Kubernetes. And then with Waypoint 0.4, we also released the ability to deploy to ECS as well. So more of those will be coming. And there are quite a few more available today. So wherever you want to run things, your applications, and even the Waypoint server, we have options for you. So clicking into this, what is this demo exactly? So this code is making use of Waypoint's GitOps workflow. What that allows us to do is to pull a repository with, if it's public, we don't need any authentication details. If it's private, we can provide those. Actually going to jump one screen back and click in here to manage settings. So you can see that I've put this Waypoint URL, which is that demo repository I shared in the chat. I've specified that I want to follow the main branch. And then inside of the GitOps folder is where I'm going to be looking at that code. You'll see that I am not using any authentication because this is a public repository, just to make things a little bit easier to demo with y'all today. But there are options available here. And then in the upcoming 0.5 release, that we've started to tackle some OpenID Connect and other authentication items there. So making the login and tokens and all of that experience a little bit better for y'all is our hope. You'll see that I've turned automated sync on, and I'm referencing my Waypoint HCL configuration in the project repository. So this is all fine and dandy. Let's actually take a look at that Waypoint HCL file itself and kind of walk through what's going on with that. So I'll go ahead and bump this up a little bit as well. I'll extend the screen, and then I think I can set change language mode. And one of my biggest pet peeves right now is having to switch to Terraform for a few of these things. My dearest hope is in the future we'll have a language server for Waypoint, Nomad, boundary, all of the different contexts. But right now we can just use Terraform for some syntax highlighting and some completion here. So what's important with Waypoint configuration is that you give it a project name. Here, we're just going to call this GitOps, and that mirrors what we saw in the Waypoint UI. Next up is the application here, and we're also going to call that GitOps, just to keep things named similarly. Next up is the build block. So here we can specify how we want to go about building our image. You'll note that we have a Docker file here in this GitOps folder. Do y'all have audio? Can you hear that?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Just want to make sure. You'll see that, so this build block, we can specify quite a few things here. I'm actually going to go ahead and open up the Waypoint project website, and you'll see that in the documentation, there's going to be different ways to build things within the Waypoint lifecycle. So cloud native build packs, just regular builds like with Docker is what we'll be using today for some of our demos. I do use this Docker pull build a little bit later too. So that's what we have available here. If you take a look at plugins, I'll talk about those in just a second. There's a lot of options here. You can write your own plugins too. And we have many, many more planned to come out over the weeks, months, and years on that front. The site's really good, and then there's some nice ways to navigate through, filter, and do some fuzzy search as well. If you have any questions about documentation or anything like that, please let me know, and I'd be happy to help you out on that front too. Or if something's not clear, we can go ahead and get that fixed as well. Okay, so we're going to be building using Docker. Cool. I'll cover some fun nuances in the next demo on that front too. We're going to be using, we want to use a registry, right? So we want to have a place to store this and work with this. This example uses AWS Lambda as our deployment platform. And so the only way to use that within Amazon is to use the Elastic Container Registry through Amazon. So we're going to go ahead and use that. I'm going to go ahead and use the US West 2, just because it's closer to me in Los Angeles. So that's the build block. Next up is the deploy block and the release block. And for most intents and purposes, these are pretty much the same, right? When it comes to deployment, I just want to push my code live, and that's what really matters to me. Though when we took a look at this step, we saw that these are two distinctly different things, especially when you start looking at canary releases and more advanced types of deployments, more involved types of deployments, we'll say. So this deploy step will actually push this to your deployment platform. And then lastly, the release will shift traffic over to that deployment that you just pushed out. This makes it easy for you to roll back or shift to different types of deployments as well. So that's our configuration. I've already gone ahead and deployed this application. So if we jump back in here, if we jump into our UI, we can use the CLI, but at this point in time, I think just for demos, it makes it a little bit easier to follow along with and understand the context for everything within this UI. So don't fret, you still have a CLI option available for you as well. I'm going to go ahead and click this. This is going to an ALB, and it looks like we have some issues here, right? It's not Monday, it's Wednesday. And is this a question or is this a statement? We probably want to fix that. I'm going to go ahead here. There is one thing I did forget, and that was to put in my name. This just uses just a URL parameter. So I could go ahead and put this in and give it my name, and there we go. So we're a little bit more correct, but not quite there yet. Let's go ahead and fix that. I'm going to go ahead and jump here into my code, into this handler.rb. And we can see this is a pretty simple Ruby script, right? Happy Monday, and here's our question mark that we want to fix. So let's go ahead. So actually, let me do this. Day ending in Y. It's a little bit more correct, and let's use single quotes for that. All right, and let's give this an exclamation point to give it a little bit more oomph. Yeah, we're just, necessary features and making sure that those are all taken care of. Okay, So we have our code in the state that we want. Let me go ahead and open up my terminal once more. Make sure that all my changes are staged here. So let's go ahead and add that handler and update greeting to be on the proper day. Awesome. I'm going to go ahead and push this up. And then here in a second, we should see Waypoint trigger and rebuild this and deploy it based on the settings that I have configured. So how is this happening? This is happening through the Waypoint server and through Waypoint's runner architecture. So if I go ahead and do a Docker PS, we'll be able to see that I have two containers running here. In the last demo, I'll show you the Waypoint server installation step. So don't fret. When you do that step, Waypoint installs two things. As of, I believe it's Waypoint 03, it installs two components, and that is the Waypoint server, which is handling all of the API requests and managing all of these objects, and then the runner, which is actually polling and looking for any changes that have been done to the code. What's nice about the Waypoint runner is that it allows for configuration to be set there as well. So with Amazon, I actually have to give it some credentials. I set those up before this call, so I didn't have to share them on my screen, but there is a way to reference and get those credentials. If I went ahead and did a Waypoint get or config get runner, that would then show everything. And right now it is in plain text. That's one of the things that the team is working on, is obscuring that a little bit and hardening some access control items in this upcoming 0.5 release. So just to keep in mind, still earlier days for the project, but really setting the stage for a lot of good features later on. All right, so let's see where we're at. Typically it takes about a minute for things to trigger here. I did have some issues yesterday when it came to configuration and some tokens. So let's see if everything's working. Okay, cool. This looks great. We can see that this build kicked off. One of the nice things about Waypoint is that Waypoint gives you, as a developer, a very easy onboarding path to get things set up. So I can take a look at the logs of my application that I'm working with. I can check the build status. And then this is going to handle all of the image promotion and pushing and other things for me, or letting me know that things did not succeed or work as I expected. We'll see one thing that's nice as well is that within Waypoint 04, we have this notion of status checks. So we can see right here that this is still building. If we hover over that, and then that check is able to let us know that that succeeded and is as we expect. Then we'll see this deployment update, and then lastly, this release once all of that is good to go. And then we can check to see if everything is working the way that it should. You'll see that I got this set up before our call. I'm able to change code, and then all of this is able to get promoted rather quickly. One thing I noticed here too is that even though this built correctly, this still takes a little bit to push. So if you see this succeed, there is still one more step pending, and that is that push. So it looks like that is okay. Now we're in the deploy step. So let's go ahead and jump back one screen. So this is deployed, this is releasing, and then in just a little bit, we're going to see that code update. So we have this happy Monday, not correct. We wanted to change that. This has released. But if for anyone that's worked with Lambda knows that we have, typically some cold starts, some cutting over to do with our code. So this might take a second, or maybe okay, so we got lucky. That's fantastic. I'll go ahead and add my name back in here just to make sure everything is working appropriately. And we can see that our first demo succeeds just as we expected. So that is the GitOps workflow in Waypoint, and just some details around how Waypoint works. So before we jump into the next demo, which is going to cover Kubernetes, the kube control apply functionality that we have in here, are there any questions, or is there anything that I can kind of help illuminate on any fronts Waypoint?
One question I had was, now you're running this in a local mode, and I know you said you can deploy it to Kubernetes, but is there built-in like GitHub authentication or SSO, or how's authentication authorization handled?
So right now it's so Waypoint is pretty self-contained. So whatever platform we're going to push it to is it kind of it's giving root access and it's managing all those things directly. So not the best right now. That's currently what we're looking at for this next release is better ways to harden this, right? So right now, so short story, right now, no. That's one of the things that we're looking at, though. We really want this to be easy mode is the joke during our sprint planning, and it's just nice to have that, right? When you don't have all these underlying things to set up and take care of, it'd be nice with like Vault to be able to turn these things on or provide a way to authenticate and then just be done with it. So
I guess so. Yes, and I understand why, like you said, Vault or like and I was going to say like Keycloak, but I don't want to have to deploy all that to get this thing up and running. Can't it just handle give it some SAML and it'll do single sign-on?
Absolutely. I think that's one of the things that we want to provide. And honestly, we've learned a lot with, I think Mitchell just tweeted one of the other days, he was taking a look at OpenID Connect and GitHub and some of the ways that authenticates, potentially looking at the ability to use that as a good authentication platform, and noticed that, there are some shortcomings to that. And honestly, we've just learned a lot about some of the all of the platforms available and kind of what their shortcomings or their successes are. So definitely working through that, and happy to share as we hit those hurdles or successes, share more about that. Still underway at this time. But awesome. I did see one question roll into the chat. How do we test builds and deployments with Waypoint? So what's nice with Waypoint is that Waypoint does have a full API. I don't have a good example to really show on in terms of this question, but one of the features that we're looking at utilizing in the future is these status checks. So we can see here, all 1 targets are healthy, meaning that our Lambda deployment is healthy. It's in a good state. We're getting 200 OK results from our load balancer. And basically the way that works behind the scenes is that Waypoint looks at that platform, interacts with it, and is able, whether it's Kubernetes, Lambda, whatever it is, it's able to see that application is still up and running. And if there is the need to redeploy or push things out again, that does have that capability. Or you can hit the API and get that status as well. Like see oh, this deployment failed 5 minutes ago. Let's see what's going on. And then we have these logs available to look at things. One of the things I really like about Waypoint, I know I'm biased, but one of the things I really like about it is that there's this ability to get the logs from a Lambda function right within the tool, and we're able to see all of that right here. And that's that was a lot of work from the team, and just I think a really cool feature. Really helps with debugging some of those things that you're looking at transforming into Lambda functions. So all that to say, there's functionality to be able to help out with integration tests or end-to-end checks. But nothing too specific at this time, but definitely something that we're thinking about.
So this Lambda example, this was not using any Terraform under the hood. So it is using just directly the AWS SDK and some Waypoint plugin for Lambdas. Okay.
Exactly.
Is that a confusion in identity, or is that saying that Terraform is inadequate, or what is that saying actually?
It's really interesting because so I primarily work with Terraform and with Waypoint and focus on application delivery, deployment, developer experience. And that's one of the things that I just kind of have wonderful thought experiments and gymnastics that no one else gets to hear. And I'm kind of bummed about that, but maybe spin up a podcast later. But it's a really difficult problem because there are some things where, like, even talking about maybe we'll deploy Helm deployments at some point in time with Waypoint and have that ability to do so. But you can do that with Terraform too. So what tool makes sense? What contexts make sense?
And where is the state? Because Waypoint doesn't maintain state, does it?
It does to some extent. It has a record and pointers to all of the things that exist within your cloud. But at that point in time, you're kind of getting into you're nudging a little bit into Terraform's space. And so
Right.
there is definitely some overlap there. And then it's my hope and constantly having these discussions as well as like, where's the line? Is it okay to walk over this for this context? You know, ideally in a perfect world, I'd love a way to use Terraform to work with Waypoint and set up the server, configure it, have data sources, you know, and have that back and forth. I think that at some point in time, I'm confident that that kind of functionality will come. But
I feel like this is what the community at large is desperately wanting HashiCorp to chime in on. Like, what is the continuous delivery strategy for Terraform, and how do you do these kinds of things that Waypoint is doing? And then Waypoint's not even doing it because it's hard to do. And yeah, okay. All right. Well, let's get into, I'm sure everyone has even more questions. God, I have a long list here already from this, but why don't we get into your next demo, Taylor, and have an intermission there for some more questions after that.
Absolutely. I did hear Mazen, please forgive me if I didn't say that correctly.
Yeah.
I saw you chimed in. Was that a good answer to your question, or is there anything to follow up there before jumping to the next demo?
Thank you, Tyler, by the way. But one thing that I just to add here, like let's say if I have application like let's call it GitOps, the same one, and on a team that has multiple people, would someone would create a pull request on a branch, and then it would go to a CI with I don't know, Circle CI or GitHub Actions or anything. Would be able to test this one and tell if the PR is building successfully and then deployed successfully. Like deployed, I would imagine it's using canary release approach, and with this, the entire flow would be done in a seamless way with the API, or we have to write a lot of code, or how is it like? Oh, I'm just curious about it. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And great question. I'll actually delve into the next demo because there is one thing I really didn't show you. So this is like a nice end-to-end demo of, and like things are set up. There are a couple of things that are obscured. So let me delve into that. I'll answer that question in this next demo. Cool. So we have our projects. I do like Waypoint's UI too, because it updates on the fly. So let's go ahead and jump out of our GitOps folder and let's get into our next demo, which is the Kubernetes apply capability. What this is when we looked at Waypoint's ability to deploy things to Kubernetes, you can do it, but there are a lot of things that we have to support, different specifications, different annotations, and that's one of the things that we're looking at for future releases as well. So to kind of help with that a little bit and help people, you know, dip their toes in this and figure out if it's a good tool for them, the team's added this ability to apply using kube control. Right now, this is just used locally, but we're talking about putting this into our runners and other things so that we could install this on Kubernetes and then use that as, you know, have a binary there and kind of control things there. So right now, with this demo, this is just going to use my local configuration, and I'm going to be using Docker Desktop for that. So let me make sure I'm in the right context there. Go ahead and get our nodes. We'll see, you know, okay, so that's all good. And in terms of our pods, we don't have anything up on Kubernetes. So my Docker for desktop Kubernetes. Cool. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to jump into this folder and we can walk through this a little bit as well. So this should look pretty similar to you. As soon as I jump into the correct language, there we go, get out of here. Okay, fantastic. So we have our project name again. Not too much has changed here. You'll see some labels added just to kind of keep track of what's going on. We're using Docker to build this again, and we're using my Docker Hub registry, only Dol, Kubernetes, apply, and then we're using latest. I'm a professional, don't do this at home. Latest is not a good way to go ahead and store tags. You will get yourself into trouble, if not today, tomorrow, or sometime in the future. Waypoint does have the ability to use like a SHA value and some other things, but I just don't have that in this demo, but definitely something I can update in the future. Lastly, we're going to just deploy this. There isn't really a notion of release with the Kubernetes apply plugin, just because there's no ALBs, there's no things to control. This is really just a Kubernetes kube control apply at the end of the day. What this is using is a path to ascertain where these YAML files are. So we can see everything right here. And then lastly, this is looking for a specific label, which is a necessity for using this plugin, just to identify, if you have a huge folder with a lot of different labels and objects and Kubernetes things that you want to apply, you can filter them by using this. Otherwise, it's not going to detect or to use those. I believe that's a requirement at this time, but maybe at some point in the future, allow for pushing all of this up at the same time. You'll notice some things that don't really look like a Kubernetes deployment in here, and that's this for and end for this for block. And that's going to, if we had any environment variables to push through, that would push those through. One of the ways that Waypoint works is that when it builds an image, it actually it installs an entry point into that image, and that's what gives Waypoint the ability to interact with it, check the status, get the logs, run things remotely, and all of those features. One thing that I don't have a demo for, but I'm happy to jump on a call or walk with you at some point in time, is the ability for cloud native build packs as well. So say I'm a developer, I don't know Docker files. I don't really have the time for that. Does anyone really have the time for that? I don't. Cloud native build packs give you the ability to build a good general use case image for if you're using a Node application for Node, Ruby application, Ruby, Go, et cetera, so long as you have, like this one's a Python one, requirements.txt and anything to show what kind of project that it is. You can't just put a README in. Unfortunately, not yet. AI hasn't gotten that good just yet to sense what that is, but maybe someday. I would love that. Okay, so that's what's going on here. We're going to take a little bit different of an approach here. So before we just committed our code and pushed it up because everything was already set up, which is great, but let's learn a little bit more how Waypoint works. Waypoint works by running the init command first. So I have a Waypoint HCL file inside of my repository. So when I hit Waypoint init, it's going to take a look at that, validate that everything looks good there, and then it's actually going to install that into the Waypoint server. So if I jump back here, I've not refreshed the page. We'll see that this Kubernetes apply project got created. Let's delve a little bit deeper in here, and we'll see nothing's been deployed, no logs, nothing like that. I'll go ahead and bump this over here so we can watch this in real time. So what's nice about Waypoint 2 is that Waypoint has build, release, and deploy CLI commands that we can run. So we can run them all at the same time by running Waypoint up, which is quite nice and makes things a little bit easier. Right now, there is no way to have Waypoint just deploy things. It is kind of an all-in solution, but that's something that we've talked about, is the nicety of not having to use Waypoint to build or skipping that step. So that's an active discussion right now. It's something we definitely want to explore, but just isn't a part of the tool set just yet. One of the nice things that we see here too is that I have this installed locally, so this is not going to be applicable, but Waypoint has this Horizon dependency that is hosted by HashiCorp, and it gives you a reverse URL, a reverse proxy, essentially, to look at those applications. The only caveat is that the Waypoint server has to be deployed publicly somewhere, whether that be a Kubernetes cluster or ECS cluster, whatever. As long as you have the ability to internally or externally access it, that's the only way it's going to work. Unfortunately, it won't work on my machine just because obviously my public IP, my ISP, I don't have that open to the world yet. Probably for better than for worse, but we can debate that later. Okay, so we have released this application. I should be able to go in here and take a look at my pods and see that everything is running, which is great. If I go ahead and get my deployments, I'm able to see that deployment made it. We can see everything over here in the Waypoint UI showing that that's successful as well. And what else was I going to do? Let's go ahead and proxy this and actually see that this is running. So this didn't have, you'll note that this did not have a service. This is just a deployment. And so if we jump in here to localhost, not go to console, but let's go to this Flask application. Awesome. We can see that the traffic is going through here. I'm able to proxy this appropriately, and we can see that this Flask app got built and deployed using Waypoint, thus concluding our second demo, and giving a little bit more insight into the different steps that make up Waypoint and kind of getting used to that. So hopefully that answers your question, Mazen, and happy to answer any other questions that you might have on that front too.
Thank you very much, Tyler. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I think to answer your question in a little bit more detail, you can segment the steps. So instead of running Waypoint up, you could do build, deploy, release, and then have some.
It checks on CI for that. Yeah, I can imagine this can scale up really well.
So Taylor, I think I speak for a lot of people in the community that the introduction of Waypoint was a little bit.
Whoop, I think you just froze for me.
No, it's a really dramatic pause.
Yeah, I'm like, what is it? Awesome. We will wait for him to come back, but awesome.
David, I tried to answer you in Slack, but David B had asked if Waypoint understood. I'm going to assume the answer is no, but YAML. In other words, like how to YAML the HCL serializer.
So right now it does in the form of that kube control apply. For example, if you wanted to use Nomad, you can use those HCL or those other files as they exist today. But with like an equivalent Terraform, say you have the YAML and you want to convert that over to HCL or something like that. I don't believe that exists today completely, but definitely something I can check into. I'm not 100% sure on that.
But the actual waypoint.hcl is an HCL file, which means that you basically need to write it in JSON or, HCL, which is like JSON compatible.
Exactly. That's correct.
Yeah, and I had just, so it turns out that Cloud Posse does have a tool that does exactly that, where it'll basically take YAML to Terraform. So it's called Atmos. So check it out.
Yeah. Eric just pinged me and said that he had a power outage, so he's not sure if he can get back on. So
cool, awesome. Well, please feel free to keep the questions coming. I'm going to go ahead and check on that one Terraform bit that I was running just to make sure everything came up as expected. Okay, so that looks good. I can delve a little bit into the next demo and get some things set up. But yeah, if you have questions, please keep them coming. I'm happy to answer this for you.
So I had a quick one. And maybe this is what Eric touched on earlier, and I maybe missed it, but is it on the roadmap to support Terraform like in Waypoint? So you could basically be able to do a Terraform apply from Waypoint?
So we're talking about that right now. Absolutely. So one of the things that, let me see where this is. So one of Waypoint's really nice features that I like, I don't have a demo for this today. I have a demo somewhere, just not for this today. But there is this ability to set the configuration for Waypoint. So let me see if I can find this. There are a few different ways to work with this. So here it is. So there is this dynamic configuration ability within Waypoint. And so you can actually look at, so here it's getting this database username from Terraform Cloud, for example. Granted, this is Terraform Cloud, but there's the ability to take a look at Terraform state and pull things in from that and integrate that with Waypoint. Same thing with Vault, same thing with your Kubernetes configuration maps and other things like that, secrets, whatnot. You could turn those into environment variables and interact with things in that way. What's nice about this too is that if I go to update any of these, you have you also have the ability to auto roll out these features and then restart that process on those pods without actually restarting the pod itself, and kind of inject it in, kind of like environment console, the env console.
I think reading config from Terraform is certainly one thing, but that is completely a different animal from like actually applying the Terraform as part of like a plugin target or whatever, like one of the steps. Like when you actually do builds, like I could see it running Terraform plan, and then when you actually do deploy, it would run Terraform apply for you, like under the hood kind of thing.
That's
Right,
what
you'd be completely undermining Terraform Cloud then. So that's kind of a weird, like, which I'm a huge fan of because nobody uses that. But I mean, it's like, it's just, I almost want to guess now, like that's maybe where it was headed. It would be weird to like have Terraform Cloud and then have an open source CD tool that like basically gave Terraform like some portion, you know what I mean? Like away for free. I don't know.
That's the discussion too, is what is the best way to integrate this? Because at the end of the day, it's like obviously biased and kind of working with Terraform Cloud in those use cases. Obviously, if that use case is good for you, by all means, but there's that ability to run, Terraform back with S3 or even with Terraform Cloud, and then you can just run Terraform on its own and then right within GitHub Actions, say. But I think that I do want to see that too. Just a way to work. I want to see Terraform and Waypoint work better together, and help one facilitate one another too. Again, have Terraform resources that work with Waypoint and give me that ability to create a deployment, configure things, and not have to manually set things or put things into configuration files, to have that ability to use data sources and read and write things. But I do also want that ability to, at some point in time, I would love to see Terraform in there as well. And definitely something I'm raising up to the team as an item for consideration for sure.
And just one. Oh, sorry. I just had one other quick question. It should be a quick one. Plugins. Is there like a registry or something along the lines of the Terraform, provider registry, or how do plugins end up like in your instance of Waypoint if you build a custom one and publish it?
So right now it's pretty heavily linked. It's kind of like the early days of Terraform, where everything's all within that same repository for Waypoint. So using ECS, Lambda, SSM, all of these things, these are all within the Waypoint repository right now. And it's my guess that at some point in time those will break out, but you can see we don't have a ton of them just yet. That's our want, is for this to expand in the same way that Terraform grew, giving that plugin functionality, giving that similar like provider type feel for this. So even with Lambda right now, that works for this context where you have a running application where you want an ALB to be there all the time. It doesn't account for, say, if I wanted a cron job or that kind of a triggered job. And I've talked with the team a lot about that as well. And they're all in. They're like, no, that makes a lot of sense. But we probably, would call it something different and use it in a different capacity. So there is this ability to do this. You can write plugins and work with that directly too. I believe there's some documentation on how to do that on the site. But definitely something that we want to see. Definitely something that we'll happy to kind of guide and help support within the community. But and something that we want to help build out too internally at HashiCorp, and give some more options and easier ways for people to work with this.
So can you guys hear me okay, or is my connection too bad? I am tethering now. All right, cool. So yeah, what I was building up to there on my question was just, when Waypoint was introduced, it was really an ambiguous product to, I think, everyone who saw it. Like, it looks rad. It seems to check off a lot of interesting boxes. And it seems like Waypoint doesn't want to be pigeonholed as being a CD platform, continuous delivery. It doesn't want to be pigeonholed as a CI platform. It doesn't want to be called CICD. But everything I see here is CICD-ish, except for it's not really optimized for the CI part. And yet you have to build the images right now in Waypoint in order to deploy them. So is HashiCorp like trying to invent a new category, or why doesn't it want to be called CI/CD?
I think what that is really is mostly around the not what it is, but kind of that vision of where it's going to be, and set it like right now. It's definitely limited, definitely early days for the project. But really, the team's really focused on kind of starting things out, taking the time to start things out right, and start them out slower, and kind of vet some things and test some hypotheses around just application deployments and delivery in general. So one of the things that's a little bit different is that it allows for, one of the things that we're looking at is, say, after you've released something, what downstream things do you want to kick off? What is it, a Slack message? Is it another deployment? You start to kind of assemble all of these things together. So even though that looks very much like CICD, that's the want, is to create these other types of use cases and contexts where you can actually go about doing some things. And then eventually breaking these things up too. If you just want to build something, if you just want to deploy or just want to release, it encapsulates the CI/CD piece, but I think that there's some wants above and below that context that we want to capture and that we want to think on.
Well, in the interest of time, we have 2 minutes or so of the original books. Why don't we have you kick off your next demo, and we'll start with questions after that.
Awesome. So this last demo is something that's a little bit irreverent, a little bit something that's fun, and I hope that you enjoy. What we're going to be doing here is, let me go ahead and clear this out. Let me jump into our last demo, and that is going to be about Minecraft. So I have set up a remote EKS cluster. I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I've actually switched into that context really quickly. I believe that I have. Okay, awesome. We'll see that we have no pods up and running here. And then, like I said before, I've already installed Waypoint locally. How do we go about installing this remotely? So it's as easy as this. Waypoint install, you specify the platform. You can pick images. Right now, it's just going to use Waypoint latest. If you don't specify that image tag, and then you do have to accept the terms of service as it stands today, just because of the Horizon service and some other things. You can package that up. You can run that on your own platforms, but a little bit more involved to do so. No nice, easy packaged solution for that yet, just quite a few steps on that front. So what this is going to do is install our Waypoint server remotely on this Kubernetes cluster. It's going to give it an endpoint that anyone would be able to connect to, so long as you have the right amount of access. And then we'll actually be able to look at this in the web and interact with some of the links that we get from that. So what this project is, so while this sets itself up, I'm going to jump into the Minecraft folder. You'll see that there's no Docker file. Just some YAML and a service. What this is going to do is this creates a Minecraft project named Minecraft for the application. Again, you'll see some labels, and this build step is using Docker pull. So while we need a build step, I'm just pulling this image just so that I can use that. It's going to inject that entry point into it, and then or for this, it's actually just going to pull it. It's not going to use the entry point, and then we're going to go about deploying this using this Kubernetes apply yet again. So let's go ahead and do that once this comes up. What this is going to allow me to do is to connect to this community Minecraft server, which will be accessible to everyone. This is going to be a public endpoint. So if again, for the interest of time, I'm not sure you'll be able to catch it quickly enough. I'll be sure to pass out the ALB address, but I'll go ahead and get this started up in the background for now. All right, this usually takes just a little bit of time. Give you some fun loading screens. I don't have any Jeopardy theme music or background music, unfortunately. I should have thought about that. Cool. All right, so that is just about ready for Waypoint. Awesome. So now you'll see that if I do a Waypoint UI authenticate, I'm going to load up this web page, and I'm going to click through here. This is not a valid HTTPS cert or anything like that just yet. Again, still working on 0.5 and getting all those ACLs and everything else set up. So you'll see we're on the web now. I'm going to go ahead and do a waypoint init. In a second, we'll see our Minecraft folder appear. There it goes. Jump in here just like before. We'll do a waypoint up, which is going to go ahead and pull that image, get things ready for us, and then push that up to the Kubernetes cluster. That'll take a second. And then again, what's nice is that ability to follow along with each of these steps. Say if your team, if you have some members that want to use that GitOps workflow, they can do that. And then you can switch over to using the CLI. So there are a lot of contexts. That's what we want to support too. If you think about Circle CI or GitHub Actions, it's kind of there's a one way into working with that, and that's a little bit more controlled. Waypoint gives a few more options for teams to get comfortable with it, or just figure out the workflow that works best for them, whether that's in a pipeline or directly. Okay, so we could access this endpoint directly externally, but since this is a Minecraft game server, you're not going to get too many things other than a HTTP response from that. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. I'm going to go ahead and get that service, and let's go wide so that we can actually get that ALB. And I'll make sure I grab the correct one here. All right, let's do a direct connection. Let's clear this one out from before. I'm actually going to go ahead and get this pod once more, and let's actually connect to the logs so we could see if I've joined this or not. Or actually, this is going to take a second because it has to do the spawn area. This will take just a few seconds. Should be good before the buzzer. Usually it sticks at 0 for a little bit, and then it's like 56, 75, and then usually finishes up pretty quickly. Might have jinxed myself.
So while that's going, what was the benefit of the Docker pull in this situation? Because it's not actually going to push that image anywhere, is it? Oh, or did you define an ECR? So then so it pulls it and then it pushes it to your ECR.
For the pull, so this one, it just pulls the image and then has it to be able to, you could use that, and then you could add something on top of that too, like putting the entry point into it, but for this, I just needed to stub out that build step like we talked about before, just to satisfy that at the end of the day.
Kind of like a no op.
Exactly. All right, so we should be good. Go ahead and try that one more time. Oh, this stopped on me. Come on. Good old live demos. Cool. So that should come up here in just a little bit. If and when this works, I'll go ahead and jump into it. That was one feature that I asked for in Waypoint 0, was it 03? Was this ability to set a startup time, because we were having issues with this server specifically taking a while to actually kick on and start up. So it should come up in just a little bit, but turn on that front. Any other questions on that front while we're waiting for this to go live?
So I got actually the feeling with that Docker build, there's a Docker pull, that there is actually a way to get this integrated with other CI systems. So with that, have you seen any work on community GitHub Actions to integrate with Waypoint?
I have seen a few things where people have used this to deploy their applications and kind of interact with, getting Terraform stood up, then using Waypoint commands. I don't know that there's an official Waypoint set of actions just yet, but I've worked a lot with Packer and Terraform, obviously, but not Waypoint just yet. Okay, there we go. So we're finally in, and we can actually see. Whoa. We can see only Dole join the game. And if we pull this back over here, I'm not sure how bad that'll clip for you on Zoom, but you'll see that I'm actually in that server. So really fun, really cool. And just like that, we create worlds, we can quickly destroy them and jump out of them. Awesome. Waypoint. Thank you. Looking for more games and some other things. A while ago, we had an old Flappy Bird node application that we found. It was like not supported at all. Really funny office hours event where they got it up and running with Waypoint and got it refreshed. So that's another use case of Waypoint, is to help revive some things or keep the lights on in some services that you might not really enjoy on that front. Waypoint does also offer this destroy capability as well. And you do have to, show it that you have that intent to want to delete things. So we can delete those things, kind of like your question before with Terraform. Waypoint's able to manage those things and then get rid of them too. So we'll still have the Minecraft. This will still exist on this Waypoint server. I've got it somewhere here, but it will be able to delete all the things it created at the end of the day, and take care of that for you, keeping a nice and tidy house.
In addition to AWS resources and all that jazz.
Keep the bill down. Yeah, make Corey Quinn happy.
So can you talk a little bit more about that entry point injection and why? I understood why it was required and based, but does that mean you are literally modifying the image before pushing it up to modify the Docker entry point? And you're actually adding a binary or modifying the image itself to have that entry point. And that's just that is a utility in and of itself provided by Waypoint and distributed somehow.
Exactly. So at build time, Waypoint puts that entry point into your image just as a final thing. You get your application all good to go, and then exactly. And then that gives you that ability to execute commands, work with the logs, and then some other niceties. And just as a good point for Waypoint as it evolves to add in more functionality and more features and some other things you might want, interacting with Vault, Console, other things that we have on our roadmap, and so that you don't actually have to go about doing that within your application itself. Basically giving that ability to
is it intelligent enough to know that you had a previous entry point, so it preserves original functionality? Or
yes, yeah, and that also uses it for. We talked a little bit about dynamic config abilities with Waypoint. So if it's a config map and you change, from food to bar, the value or something like that, it's smart enough to see that change, restart that process without restarting the pod itself, and then keeping everything current that you've specified for your application. I do have a blog post. I'll put that in the chat on kind of some background on runners and ways in which they're used, and then just the GitOps workflows. And then, I think that's most things I have relevant to that. I did have one shameless plug, if you don't mind me sharing one thing that might be of interest to y'all. Tomorrow is a event that we're kicking off at 4 a.m. Pacific. So I'll be up that early. I don't know that I'll be coherent, but we'll figure it out. There's a HashiTalks build event, and there are so many good talks on the roster. Really excited for all of those. If any look interesting to you, we'd love to have you. Sign up is free, and really just want to get some focus on building things, providers, just more of a development focused type of event. So lots of good talks. We'll have Q&A as well. So again, if there's anything that looks interesting to you, you want to talk with some of the people, and there's a QA slot, feel free to stop by. We'd love to have you.
Very cool,
Just
Taylor.
want to second that, Taylor. I went to the technical writing talk today, and it was really good material.
Awesome. Yeah.
Well, I want to be respectful here of everyone's time, and Taylor's especially. Thank you so much, Taylor, for this really amazing demo. It shows that you do a lot of demos, because it's hard to do a demo that works the first time all the way through and do it 3 times in a 1-hour segment and not go over time. So good job, Taylor. I can't wait for our next demo. I don't know, maybe we should do one on Boundary, next month or so. I think everyone would be really excited to see Boundary. Maybe Boundary deployed with Waypoint, of course, so we keep things real. So everyone, thank you so much for your time. We're going to post a video recording of this session to our YouTube channel. You'll find that at youtube.com/c/cloudposse. So you can go ahead and share that with your team. If you haven't already, do sign up for our Slack team at slack.cloudposse.com. Again, that's slack.cloudposse.com. We got nearly 4,500 really amazing people helping everyone else out. You know, I have this fundamental belief that rising tide floats all boats, and that's what we are all about. If you haven't registered for our office hours, head over to cloudposse.com/office hours to get notifications of all of our future sessions. We host these calls every week, and talk to you guys next week. See y'all.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good one. Later.
Thank you.
Thank you.